This is the spoke road outside Crieff, Perthshire, Scotland, which runs from Callum's Hill to the east for about half a kilometre to the Highlandman Lone Road. An ancient track certainly, but it is actually a coffin path or death road, where corpses would be transported, according to local legend, to avoid paying tolls. There are a few others. All of the paths to churches in this area are aligned to ancient sites, sometimes even pagan standing stones. Here you can see that there are 5 paths to the Quig's church and burial ground, outlined in blue, 3 of them aligned to Drummond Castle, 1 to a standing stone at Dunruin and another to the east to a standing stone at Money Castle. All of the church paths, however short, are aligned to some significant and powerful site. What was the purpose of people walking up and down straight paths connected to standing stones, churches and castles, and why were some of the old churches and burial grounds placed accurately above geological faults? Churches in this tract are all aligned to an ancient site, or sometimes even sites. This is St Michael's Church in Strathern Terrace, the most powerfully geomantically placed kirk in Crieff. Using Google Earth, one can draw a line down the central roof ridge of this church to a Bronze Age burial ground at nearby Gilmerton. This contained the skeleton of a warrior or chieftain, presumably killed in battle as he had a leaf-shaped arrowhead in his chest. Legend usurps him, however, saying that it contained the remains of the Scottish-Irish warrior Finn MacCumhaill or Fingal, who died much later, about 283 AD. This is the site here being excavated by Mr. Harrison Maxwell and Mrs. Chapman. From the north wall of the church, just at the pulpit, another line can be drawn to the south, precisely down an old straight track, the strange little path between the handy shop and the Tower Hotel to Dollar Crescent, shown here a little offset for easier viewing. This is the path looking up from Dollar Crescent. This leads directly to the ancient burial ground at Strigheath Mill. Let's take this in radio frequency terms. This burial ground is on top of an obvious and quite powerful geological fault. You can see it in the river to the right of this illustration. These faults emit piezoelectricity, radioactivity, electromagnetic emissions, spinning electric fields, ion flow, non-dipolar magnetic fields and other phenomena. St Michael's Church is a beautifully crafted resonating chamber. The masons knew what they were doing. With 5 spires, instead of the usual one, perhaps acting like a radio antennae or acupuncture point of the planet. The old path leading from the church could act like a waveguide, funneling energy from both the fault and the church and perhaps even the graves along the line, in both directions, amplified, possibly, by people walking along it. But why align a resonating chamber like a church down a waveguide with the resonating chamber of a grave containing the remains of a warrior? Bearing in mind that every ancient culture believed in the survival of the human spirit. The reason must be that some person or some people must have been able to access the essence of the deceased. If anyone can come up with a more likely theory, I would like to hear it. Now that the remains of the warrior reside in an Edinburgh museum, the circuit, if it is that, cannot be working as it was originally intended. When and if it was working, a congregation could further amplify the energy by singing, chanting, praying, or ringing the bell, especially at the most powerful times of the year, like Christmas, the winter solstice, when the sun's rays pass over Dumbarton Castle volcanic plug. Up King Street, through the Baptist Church, Jehovah Witnesses Kingdom Hall, Knights Templar Hall, now Delvinas, to St Michael's Church and on to Gilmerton's Allspale Church, the 4-stone circle on the golf course and further to 2 6-stone circles at Tullybelton. The sun setting on the winter solstice at the foot of King Street. As a child I used to wonder why the Scottish Episcopal Church in Crieff's Perth Road had its burial ground several miles away at the Perthshire Mausoleum. Here is the answer. It is accurately aligned to the ancient site. Down the central roof ridge of the church you can draw a line on Google Earth to the corner of the graveyard of the mausoleum and into the southwest corner stone. It must be no coincidence that animal and even human sacrifices were sometimes placed under the cornerstones of churches. This is the mausoleum carefully placed over the Highland boundary fault. At the spoke road, where we began, we can end. Drawing a line to the west on the 6-inch map from the tiny church and burial ground at Strowan, we arrive at the Samson Stone, erroneously called a glacial erratic at the centre of over 20 ancient sites and with a badly eroded carved footprint on top. That will be featured in my next film. This is my final book, Crieff's Ancient Magic, possibly the most carefully geomantically engineered town in the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, it is at present only available locally,